The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "I have come to set the earth on fire, and how I wish it were already blazing. There is a baptism which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it is accomplished. Do you think that I have come to establish peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. For now, on a household of 5 will be divided 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. A father will be divided against his son, and a son against his father. A mother against her daughter, and a daughter against her mother. A mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to the Lord Jesus. The summer heat can sometimes bring devastating fires. We remember the terrible forest fires in Australia some years ago, and more recently the fires in part of California. I remember how the fires in California consumed many houses in Santa Monica. We tend to consider fire a destructive force. A few years ago, we saw what the fire did in the wonderful Cathedral of Notre Dame. Fortunately, no one was killed in the fire, unlike the forest fires in California and Australia and other parts of the world. Knowing the potentially destructive and life-threatening power of fire, we would usually be very wary of someone who publicly announces, "I have come to bring fire to the earth." However, that is what we find Jesus saying at the beginning of today's Gospel reading. As so often in the Gospels, Jesus was not speaking literally. John the Baptist had announced that whereas he was baptized with water, the more powerfully one who was coming after him would baptize with the Holy Spirit and fire. The fire that Jesus came to bring upon the earth was the fire of the Holy Spirit. At the beginning of the Acts of the Apostles, the Holy Spirit came upon Jesus' first followers in form of tongues of fire. The Holy Spirit is the Spirit of God's love. Saint Paul, in his letter to the Romans, says that God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that has been given to us. Jesus was aflame with the fire of the Spirit of God's love. He came to ignite a spiritual fire in people's hearts and in our world. And in the Gospel reading declares, "How I wish it were already blazing." Jesus wanted a world aflame with the fire of God's love. Whereas we think of fire as destructive, we don't think of love as destructive. Authentic love is always life-giving, and God's love is supremely life-giving. Yet, the image of fire that Jesus uses for the Spirit of God's love suggests that there is a destructive side to such love. The spiritual fire that Jesus ignited sought to destroy the power of evil. The love that Jesus embodied and released into the world worked to overcome all the forces that brought death to God's people, to humanity, and to God's creation. He had a burning desire to change the world by confronting violence, injustice, and the oppressive power. He was on fire with God's loving desire to bring something of God's kingdom to the earth. This set Jesus, this set Jesus on a collision course with the various kingdoms of this world who had a vested interest in this status quo. Jesus knew that starting this divine fire would cost him dearly. That is why he goes on to say in the gospel reading, "There is a baptism I must receive, and how great is my distress until it is over." The baptism he must receive refers to his passion and death into which he would soon be flung because powerful people could not live with the fire he was igniting. Jesus was also aware that the fire he was lighting would have painful consequences for his followers. Many of his disciples would find themselves in conflict with those members of their own families who found this fire too dangerous and wanting to extinguish it. There was something disruptive about the fire Jesus ignited, and there is something disruptive about the fire Jesus ignited, and that disruptive force would impact the family, resulting in fathers divided against sons, sons against father, mothers against daughters, and daughters against mother. We are here at the Sunday Eucharist because some part of that fire that Jesus lit is burning within our hearts. The fire of the Spirit of God's love has been lit in our lives. We often pray that lovely prayer, "Come, Holy Spirit, fill my heart and kindle me the fire of your love." Perhaps we sometimes pray the prayer because we recognize that the fire of the Spirit has died back within us and needs to be reignited. On one occasion, the Apostle Paul called on Timothy, his co-worker, and said to him, "Fan into a living flame the gift of God that is within you, which is the gift of the Spirit, of the Holy Spirit." We all need that gift to be rekindled from time to time. The Lord wants us to be alight with the fire of the Spirit, a fire that can renew the face of the earth by burning away all that is hostile to humanity. It has been said that the two disciples of Jesus have a revolution in their heart, in the sense that they have a burning desire to work with others for a better world. We may be struck by the efforts that people are already making to ignite something of that heavenly fire of Jesus here in our Paris, in our society, and within our families. In this way, we can see the fire of the Spirit burning brightly. As we work to allow that fire to burn more brightly, it is important that we do not lose sight of Jesus in the word of today's second reading. As the risen Lord, He is full of the Spirit, and He is standing ready to pour the gift of His Spirit anew into our hearts if we ask for it.